I think that a lot of us are constantly breaking trust with ourselves all the time, right? We say we're going to do something. We say we want to do something. We, set up a plan to do something. We do something a few times and then we don't follow through. And every time you don't follow through and you tell your brain you're going to be following through, you break trust with yourself. And every relationship needs trust, right? Me and you, me and somebody else, everybody out there, trust is one of the absolute key pillars, if not the key pillar, in order to keep relationships thriving and surviving. And if you don't have trust in yourself, then you're lacking that key pillar.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Profound Shifts, where we talk about everything that has to do with owning your journey. And in today's episode, I get to interview somebody by the name of Nick Duska. This guy is an amazing person, and he has already in his life made some very profound shifts for himself and for other people. He's created an excellent podcast, which we'll dive into. And in this episode, what we talk about is how to basically own your journey in ways of your career, how to find ownership in your career, how to learn how to trust yourself. We talk about the value of discomfort and also momentum. And he dives deep into something that's called Ikigai, which I had never heard of before, but it's very interesting and profound. And I think that you guys are going to find tremendous value from this episode. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. All right. Hey everybody, Nate here with Profound Shifts, and I have Nick Duska on the line, founder of Right After Breakfast, the podcast, and also YouTube channel. So, Nick, how you doing, man?
Nate, what is up? I'm doing so well. I'm happy to be here with you and everybody that's listening, watching, whatever. I'm stoked to bring everybody some awesome value.
Definitely. So, and you have a
podcast.
You have a podcast, but what do you have something that's coming out tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday?
A webinar.
What's that webinar going to be on, Nick?
So that webinar is called 4 Simple Things to Find a Career You Love. And it's it's for numerous types of people. And I'll kind of walk you through who this might be for. And I think this is a kind of good groundwork to explain who this conversation in general might be for to be honest. So, what this webinar is about is essentially, again, finding you the 4 simple things that for you to find a career you love. And it's for people who are either looking to switch their job up completely, somebody who's just kind of cashing in for a paycheck right now and is looking for a completely different industry, completely different career. Or it's for somebody who's already in a job that they actually kind of like. They're into it and they're just looking to take that job to the next level. They want more purpose. They want more fulfillment in their work. And this is a webinar that can really help them do that. Or just the person who's looking for a fulfilling hobby outside of work as well. Somebody who's kind of, maybe their job is fine. They're not that worried about their job at the moment, but they feel like they kind of want to look at their life and improve their life through more of a holistic lens. And they could use something. Hobbies are so valuable for increasing the quality of your life outside of work, but also in increasing your work life as well. So those are kind of the 3 things that the webinar will help you with. And also, I think just in our conversation right now, if you're in that kind of group of people, this conversation will definitely benefit you a lot.
So I'm just curious. So somebody who is at a point where they know they need something more in their lives, like they're ready to make some kind of a shift to create more peace, joy, more of a fulfilling life. You mentioned hobbies. How do hobbies work into that?
So hobbies are super important because, look, what I do is I do career and lifestyle development. That's kind of how I call it. I'm a career and lifestyle development coach. So the career is obviously the first thing. It's extremely important because in the society that we live in, you need to make money and you need to, people can bounce around throughout careers, but it's important to on the way that you make money and do it in the most fulfilling way possible for yourself. But there's also that other part of this equation, right? Which is the lifestyle part. And you can be a certain type of person in your work, but if, you're heading over to your life, it's going to carry over, right? What you do in your life carries over to your work, and what you do in
Totally.
your work carries over to your life. It's a holistic unit. You can't be one person in one place and a completely different person in another place, at least not for long, because you're going to be found out and things are going to topple over. So the importance of constructing your outside of work life is so huge, because it's just as important as the career. Like I said, you go back and forth all the time, and you need to be able to interweave it together in order to, make both stand up as one holistic unit. So hobbies are an incredible way to keep you focused, busy, excited about life, enthusiastic about when you do leave work, enthusiastic about that, outside of just like your family and maybe a few other things that you have going on. Hobbies are truly like a pillar for people who, need to continue to build that outside of work lifestyle for themselves in order to make the whole thing click.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say, just curious, what would you say to somebody who is at a point, where they don't really know what their hobbies are? Like they don't know how to, how do I find that?
So that's basically what the webinar is about, right?
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
like I said, which is excellent, right? And just so people know, if you can't catch the webinar, which is on Wednesday, December 12th,
okay,
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you don't catch that, I know it's like literally in 2 days. So, but you can get it on my website, nickduska.com. I'll put a link on the website so you can download it. But for people who, are able to watch it, they'll understand that, yeah, like I said, this is for people who are already trying to figure out how to get to that next level in their career or get to a completely different career. But it's also for those people who are trying to figure out what hobby they want. So this webinar is essentially, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit what it's about right now so I can kind of answer your question.
All right,
so
thanks.
The webinar is about Ikigai, and Ikigai is a reason for being. That's basically what it's loosely translated to. Ikigai is a Japanese word. And this model works perfectly for people who are looking for hobbies, who are looking to kind of create a purpose-filled, fulfilling thing that you can do outside of your work. And the way that you do that is essentially combining 3 different pillars, right? So you have 1, what you're good at. You have number 2, what you love. And you have number 3, what the world needs. And those are the 3 pillars that you can use to build a hobby for yourself. The 4th remaining pillar, which you don't need if you're trying to build a hobby, is what you can be paid for. So that's the one that we walk through. If you're in the career subset, if you're the person who's trying to go get a new career or new industry, or you're trying to take your career to the next level, what you can be paid for is very important. But for the hobby people, it's what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs. So we can dig into that a little deeper if you want. What do you think?
Well, I don't want to take away from your webinar, but definitely, having those 3 that intrigues my curiosity, because I see so many people who are doing that without even thinking about it. Like they just kind of naturally fall into like, what are they good at? And then I think where sometimes we end up falling off is like, what does the world need? Because we're not really thinking about how can we serve other people. But that seems like it's really where like fulfillment, like life fulfillment comes from. I mean, what do you think about that? Because that was the 3rd pillar, right? What does the world need?
What does the world need? Yeah. That's the 3rd pillar. Yeah. I mean, what the world needs is so important. And that's one that is a little complicated and intense at first. I think people read that and they're like, what the world needs? That's how do I even comprehend that? What the world needs is, I mean, so many things, and they're all too big for me. So where do I even start? And what I like to say to people is try to take it down to the micro as you can get it, honestly. And if you think about it, the most micro you can get it is, what do I need, right? As an individual, what is it that I need or that is important to me in my life? So whether that's being able to de-stress, whether that's making money, whether that's receiving education, receiving comfort, what are those things that you need that are given to you that are valuable? And then understand that everything that you need, other people also need those things, right? Because if you need it, I can guarantee you're not the only one out of 7 billion people.
Yeah.
So there's other people out there that need it as well. So if you're needing security, safety, all these different types of things that may be valuable to you, that's a great place to start, is what do you need? And then you can go even farther if you want. You can look at, well, what does your family need? What are the needs of your family? Or what are the needs of your friends? And then take it even bigger from there if you want to go even bigger and say, what's the need of your immediate community? Maybe your neighborhood, maybe your town or your city. And you can look at those types of things too. So that makes it a little more digestible. And I think if we work our way up to the macro, it makes it seem a little less intimidating than what the world needs, but you can still understand the concept and you can get what you need to get out of it.
Right. I one of the things that comes to my mind when thinking about making these leaps towards doing something like that is sometimes there's something in our lives that seems to like hold us back from making those kind of jumps. And I think that a lot of times it stems from a fear, and who knows where that fear comes from? It could be from a whole lot of things. And something that I've heard you talk about before that I think is extremely valuable is the value of discomfort. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the value of discomfort is, it's valuable in a lot of different ways, right? So it is valuable in your career development. It's valuable in just your personal development overall. It's valuable in your lifestyle development and all sorts of different things. I can give you a little background story here. So for me, growing up, and I think for a lot of people, there is a resistance to the feeling of discomfort. And when we grow up and when we're children, we're used to everything being taken care of for us. We're cared for by our parents or our elders or the people around us. And that's in response to the fact that we need that a lot of the time. But as we get older, we need to be able to combat that. And, a long time ago, you were kind of thrusted into the world a little more intensely than we are now, right? Now things are a little slower, it's a little easier, and technology has made it even more easier for us to kind of interact and be in the world in some ways. We're not needing to be as uncomfortable as we used to be. We don't need to have those personal relationships with people. We don't need to have those hard in-person conversations all the time. We don't need to go out and do some sort of hard physical activity that's uncomfortable outdoors. And that's not, for some people is necessary, but for many people is not. And so we're not having to deal with the same types of discomfort that maybe we would have even a few hundred years ago, right? And maybe even less than that, because technology is, only a few decades old. Yeah. So at least the technology we're dealing with now. And so it's really important, especially in this day and age, for us to have a conscious understanding that in this age of, smartphones and technology and convenience, that we're not using convenience in order to escape something that makes us uncomfortable. Because if we're using it because it truly is convenient, that's one thing. But if we're using technology to escape discomfort, that's not good. And because discomfort is how we grow, right? And there's that quote where it's like pressure makes diamonds. That's one of those classic quotes. And it really is true. Yeah. When you work out, it hurts, it burns. You can barely do the last rep, right? But that's how you make the gains. That's how you get stronger. When you're doing yoga, it burns. You're sweating, you're dripping. You want to stop. You want to collapse on the ground half the time, right? If you're really pushing yourself. Yeah. But that's how the practice grows. That's how you take it to the next level. And it's the same thing with your life. It's the same thing with how you go about becoming better in general as a person and reaching your human potential, which is limitless, but you cannot keep pushing forward in the best way possible if you're not willing to feel discomfort, because out of discomfort, out of pressure comes growth. So we need to be conscious of the fact that, okay, what is preventing us from a lot of this discomfort? Why don't we want to be uncomfortable? And like you said, fear is a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're fearful of what's on the other side. We're fearful of, failure. We're fearful of all these different types of things, humiliation that we don't want to have to deal with. And it's instinctual for us. It's instinctual to not want to do those things. But unfortunately, a long time ago, we kind of had to do a lot of those things. And now we don't have to do as many. So we have to understand that if we're doing something that's uncomfortable, it's not a game changer. It's not a life ender, right? We're not going to get eaten in the jungle. We're not going to get laughed at and beheaded or something crazy, like in most cases.
Yeah.
But like, this is what happens if you can push yourself into that discomfort. Is you find euphoria, you find excitement, you find joy, you find growth. These are all the things that are on the other side of pushing yourself through discomfort. It's not, you have to get through that initial fear. That's true. But you have to understand that everything you want is on the other side of that discomfort. There's very little that you're truly going to want in life that you're just going to kind of walk and skip into, no problem. And you don't really have to grow much, and you're just going to achieve it. Unfortunately, that's not how life really works. You really do have to be able to face those fears, face those discomforts. But I promise you, on the other end of it, just like if you're working out, just like if you're working on your yoga practice, just like anything else that takes dedication and perseverance and a bunch of discomfort, it's going to be fantastic on the other end. And that's where you're going to see the incredible results.
Yeah. And I agree about the incredible results. How about as far as like, do you have any tools or advice for somebody who's like, they're at this point and they're looking for it and they're saying, man, I really want to do that, but like, I don't know how to get myself to take that first step. Do you have any words of advice for somebody who's in that kind of a situation?
Yeah, well, we've talked about this before, right?
Totally.
I mean, this is like a great conversation because it's true. It's like, okay, where do I start?
Yeah.
How do I even get off the couch and get to that first thing that I want to do that's like scaring the crap out of me, right? Like, I don't even know what to do. And it's like, literally what you need to do is you need to take the smallest step possible. I think a great example that we were talking about a few weeks ago was, let's say that you want to do public speaking, right?
Yeah.
And in order to do public speaking, you have to reach out to people in places that are holding events for public speaking. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to reach out. Okay, but reaching out, okay, well, what's the smallest step I can do in reaching out? Well, you could send an email. Okay, so I guess I could draft like a long email about, why I want to do this and who I am and all this kind of stuff. But geez, I mean, that's a long email. I don't know. That's going to make me kind of uncomfortable, and I'm going to have plenty of opportunities to write a paragraph and then like leave and be like, you know what, I don't want to finish this email. Yeah. So you know what you do? You do the smallest thing possible. What's even smaller than that? You know what? I'm going to send a 2-sentence email to somebody about speaking at their event. And then I'm going to push send. I'm going to close my laptop. I'm going to run away and hide in my room for an hour. And yeah, that was scary, right? It was a little scary, but you made it as small as possible. You opened up your laptop. Okay, that was the first thing. Can you open up your laptop? Yes, I can do that. Okay, well, if you can open up your laptop without running away, then we're good. All right. Can you open up Gmail or Yahoo or your email account? Okay, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about, can you put the person that you're reaching out to? All right, can you find their email, put it in? All right, so these are the small steps, right? Okay, now you have Gmail open, their email address is on there, you wrote the subject line. Okay, now can you write the 2 sentences in order to tell them, to ask them if they're holding speaking events and if you can join? All right, and so those are the small things, and then all you have to do is push a button called send, and there you go. So now it's literally come down to, can I push this button? That's it. So you've done all these small things, all the way from sitting down to opening the laptop itself, to putting in the email address in Gmail, to pushing the button, and just focus on it as literally the smallest steps physically possible that you can think of.
I think, something that I got some advice about is, like when you're looking at doing something like a big project, a lot of us think about like the end goal and like where we want to end up rather than looking at like what you're talking about is taking the small steps in there. And so we look at it and we see this giant chunk of work, that we need to go through rather than just saying, well, just focusing like what you're saying on taking that first step. And that's all you put your focus on is just getting through those first steps. And I think that's huge. And then something else that builds upon would be momentum, because now you've started something. And so like when a snowball rolls down a hill, it's pretty hard to, it keeps gaining in size and momentum. And what do you think about that? I mean, as far as like starting that momentum ball.
Yeah, I mean, so that's true. You made a couple good points there. So the first thing I definitely want to touch on is the fact that, focusing short term versus long term, right? I'm a true believer in very short term actionable step goals that you can achieve, right? These are things that, like, can I open a laptop? Yes, I know with 100% certainty I can do that. There's nobody else who has any control over that. Now, if you're setting a goal at 2 months in the future that you want, how many of those variables getting to that goal are truly up to you? There's a lot of the time okay, well, this person might have to do this and this other person might have to do that in order for me to get to this goal. And I think it is good to have long-term compass visions, very long-term, what you can kind of see and feel and touch and imagine that you want in the future. But I think it's so vitally important that we truly stay in the moment and that we focus on very short-term goals, very short-term actionable steps that we can control completely. Because if we put the complete responsibility on ourselves, then we know that we can hold ourselves accountable and nothing else really matters. Everything else is just a reaction to what we are doing. Yeah. So it's important that I think people understand that is that we need to take the shortest actionable steps possible in order to get an outcome, instead of trying to view an outcome of something that we want and trying to do the things that create it, right? It should be, let's start here and get to here by doing a bunch of little things back here. Not let's view it here and hope that we can get here by by doing some things out here that can make this journey possible. So that does tie into momentum in a cool way, because momentum is all about the things that you're doing right now, every day, the small little things. So there is a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and it's one of the first books that I ever read about personal development, personal growth. I think your listeners would really, really benefit from this book if they haven't read it. And if they have, I'm sure they benefit. Incredibly powerful. And it's essentially all about the power of momentum. It's all about the power of, he uses an example of a penny a day. If you were to invest a penny a day into your bank account, obviously, every day that's just adding one simple penny.
Yeah.
But over time, with interest, the interest rises as you put more and more and more pennies in that bank account. So over time, you start to gain more and more and more money. So you're not just getting a penny every day. After about a month, you might be getting a couple pennies every day. And after a year, you might be getting 4 pennies every day because of that compound interest that kicks in.
Yeah.
So it's that concept of exponential growth. And I'm sure people know what an exponential growth curve looks like, but it's basically, it looks kind of flat at the bottom, and then it really starts to rise and rise and rise, and it's almost going straight up by the end, right? Because that's exponential growth. It's just slowly gaining momentum until you are hitting this peak that's going almost straight up. And it's the same concept with personal growth. It's the same concept with habits. Anything that you are trying to create in your life works with this concept. And it kind of blew my mind the first time I heard it. I was like, that's how it works? And it's like, yeah, instead of a penny a day, why don't you put in a habit a day? Why don't you put in something that you're doing every day and, put that habit in the bank, right? Do that thing every day. Because at first, the first week, the first month, that line's going to be looking pretty straight, and you're going to be looking back like, man, I've been working out for, 2 weeks. Every day for 2 weeks, I've been putting my penny a day in, but I'm not seeing much growth here. Like I'm still kind of looking like not how I want to look.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's how it works, right? But I can guarantee you by, say, a couple months, you're going to start seeing incredible changes every day to the point where like things add up, right? Those habits that once seemed just kind of like annoying and not really working at first, over time, it gains momentum, and you put in that penny a day into the bank, and that exponential growth curve just goes up and up and up. And I can tell you from my own life experience, it is true. You know, I mean, just for something like the podcast that I do, the Right After Breakfast podcast, when I first started the podcast, I didn't have anybody really listening, and I mean, I probably went 6 months with hardly anybody listening at all. And I was like, I mean, this takes a while. And then, but it's after that point, once you start picking up listeners here, picking up listeners there, people listen to your other stuff. And after about a year, things start picking up, and it's like the amount of change is crazy.
I was going to say, so when you were building your podcast and you were going through that first initial 6 months, how did you keep yourself committed to persevering, even though like the results that you were seeing might have been a lot smaller than what you wanted to see? Like, what drove you to keep moving forward?
You got to trust, Nate. You got to trust in the exponential growth curve, right? Like, if you know that exponential growth curve exists, then then you can track where you are in the process. You might not know exactly how long it's going to take. I mean, there's no exact timeline on this exponential curve, but I will tell you that, a lot of the time for, a project, I've heard that, a lot of the time you're not going to see results sometimes for 2 years into a big project that you're trying to do, and you might not really start. But once you start hitting that curve, once you start hitting that point where it's going up and up, all of a sudden you're waking up every day like, whoa, this is like better and better every day. Now I'm all of a sudden I'm seeing results here. What's happening out of almost nowhere? And I thought nothing was going to be there. And then all of a sudden you're like, what? How is this even possible?
Yeah.
And I think if you don't understand that concept, then I get that. If 6 months into something, you're like, I'm not seeing results, and I'm working hard, I'm working my butt off here, and I'm not seeing anything. Yeah. Like, people quit all the time because they don't think that it's good enough. They don't think that it's worth it. They don't think that people care or like their stuff. And that's not necessarily true. It's just all a part of that law of exponential growth. And I promise you, if you put in the work, you will reap the rewards. So you've just got to hang in there and understand that you will start hitting those exponential growth, curves up in that other region, and you'll know when it happens.
Yeah.
And momentum is real.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something else too that a lot of us get stuck in is like when we're working towards something, like we have this vision or something that we expect to see in the future, and as we're going towards that, we get locked in like this certain like we're on railroad tracks, when really we're all like sports cars. Like, sometimes we need to make a pivot. It doesn't mean you change the direction of what you're doing, but like a small pivot to shift where you're going to maybe start getting those results too is huge.
And that's self-awareness, right? And that's huge too. You need to have self-awareness throughout the process. Yeah. If you're just going to blindly look down and be like, I'm going to do the same thing the same way for 2 years. Yeah, well, I mean, that's not smart. And you actually may see results out of that. There's a good chance you will, because people will. Exponential growth doesn't care how bad something is.
Yeah.
Something long enough, you'll still see the growth. It's just not going to be very big growth. It might not be the growth you want. But if you add in that awareness throughout, which hopefully people have, right? You got to be learning throughout that process. If you're not learning, if you're not observing, if you're not able to take those small pivots throughout the time that you're doing something, and make, in my example, make the intro song a little better, have a question in there that's a little more exciting for the podcast listeners, have guests that align with what I'm into a little more. Those are things that you constantly have to be thinking about. And I'm still thinking about it all the time with my podcast. I mean, I just got interviewed the other day on a podcast, and she was an incredible host. And I was like, wow, there is so much to learn from her. There are so many cool things in here. I wish I had been doing these for a year and a half now, and like amazing little fun questions and fun little things that like, I'm like, no wonder people enjoy this podcast. I need to do this now. So like, it's on me to have that self-awareness to understand, okay, that's something that's really cool. That's probably why she's successful. And I need to be aware of that and take that in and learn. And that's a huge way of just getting better, is like, you got to be able to learn. You got to be able to observe. You got to be self-aware.
Yeah. Right. And so becoming self-aware, I'm just curious, like, what is it that you see as far as for some of the first steps in becoming self-aware? Like, what does that look like?
Self-awareness, I mean, you just got to be able to look at yourself from another person's eyes, right? So there's perceptual positions, which you know all about too. I know, because we've talked about this before too. But perceptual positions are huge. I mean, you can constantly be looking at yourself out of your own eyes, right? And just observing the world around you. But if you don't understand how to kind of look at yourself from outside of your body a little bit, and see how things look, see how somebody else might perceive the work that you're doing, see how somebody else might perceive how you're acting and how you're interacting, and what kind of effort you're putting in, because sometimes it's hard if we're not able to step outside of our, one track mind that we kind of have sometimes, that kind of just like work, like do my thing. You have to be able to sit back and critique yourself a little bit, because if nobody else is going to do it for you, then you better be able to do it for yourself, right? You better be able to look at something you're doing and be able to say, okay, like, this is something I'm doing really well. It's not all about criticizing, right? It's also about, this is something I'm doing really well. I think this is also something I could work on based on these other things that I've seen, it's based off of observation. You got to be able to be, that self-awareness is huge. So I think, again, it's all about understanding what you're doing well. It's all about understanding what you can work on. And there's always going to be things in both categories. If you feel like there's nothing you're doing well, it's not true. It's just false. There's always something you can find that you're doing well, because there's never a case where you're doing everything right either.
Yeah.
So there's always something you can find to work on. There's always something that you can find that you're doing really well at. And so that's important, to be able to look at those things, praise yourself when needed, and give yourself the proper work that you need to get better when needed. And that's only going to happen through being able to observe your work and observe yourself from that perception that is able to make those decisions and kind of communicate that back to you.
I find that interesting. I just finished a book by David Goggins, and I think it's called Can't Hurt Me. An incredible book. This guy's phenomenal. And he talks about something that's like right on point with what you're talking about. He calls it an after action report. And basically he says what you do, after you encounter a failure, is you just look at it and you say, okay, so what are the things that I did well? I'm focusing on that. And then how did I react? Like, how did I handle myself in the face of failure? And then what can I learn? And looking at those three things and like sitting down and actually writing those things out, taking the time to handwrite them out and having them right there in front of you. And then you're able to approach that situation with a completely new viewpoint, a completely different frame of mind, and move forward.
Yeah. So, and I think you're also able to act on it too, which is another big thing. It's easy to be that person that's looking down. But writing it down is huge, because anything that you can do to force yourself to act upon those observations is huge. Because again, I'm all about action. You can observe all you want and be self-aware all you want. But if you don't take the action to do, it, then it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, okay. So a total shift now from what we have been talking about. So you have had the podcast Right After Breakfast for a while now, and you have interviewed a lot of people. And I'm curious, like, through all of these interviews of all these entrepreneurs and people who work in the wellness industry, What's like a common thread that you see in people who are making an impact, who are helping people? What's something that stands out, or a lesson that you've taken away from all of this time that you've spent working with these people?
Mm. I mean, I think I've interviewed a lot of different types of people.
Yeah.
So like you said, like I'm this current season that I'm working on, we're interviewing coaches, I'm interviewing mentors and healers and people who really work with people on a daily basis. But in the first season, I was working with, entrepreneurs, small business owners. I even interviewed a corporate executive. So there was a lot of different types of entrepreneurial type people that were doing all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
I would say the string between everybody is like we were talking about before, right? It's just not having the fear to do what you need to do, right? It's being able to take that jump and live with intention. Okay? So if you are able to kind of figure out, and this is why I love Ikigai, because for me, I was not able to live with intention until I did an exercise like Ikigai, because Ikigai lays out for you what can really bring you fulfillment and purpose. And once you understand that, it's really easy to live with intention because you know where to go next. You know where to take that step. And all the people that I've talked to, once they've gotten to that point, once they have realized, wow, this is what I want, this hits me deep, this burns a fire in my belly, they just walk with intention towards it. There's no ifs, there's no ands, there's no buts, there's no maybes, there's no next time or tomorrow. There's today. And these people they just do. They just do. And they decide what the best way to do is, and they make that decision right away. And it's not always easy decisions, People quit their jobs. People move across the country. People, almost go bankrupt. People do some crazy, incredible things that are incredibly scary, right?
Yeah.
A lot of fear were in a lot of these people's minds when going through the initial stages of, doing what they love and helping people. But the bottom line is, with intention, it's possible. And so if you are able to live your life with intention, it makes all of these things, such as fear, a lot easier. A lot of these things, such as discomfort, a lot easier to deal with, right? So, making those small steps, that was a really good one that we talked about before, of helping people with the discomfort thing. Yeah. Those small steps, but those small steps have to be made with a power of intention. You have to know why you're doing those small steps, right? And why you're going through that discomfort. Because if you don't know the why, then why would you do it? It doesn't really make sense for you. You're not just going to go through discomfort and fear for no reason.
Yeah. And whenever you start like on a new track, or you're working towards something new, like you're always going to hit like this wall. Like there's always, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're always going to hit this wall where you're going to run into difficulty, fear, challenge. Basically everything is going to show up that's going to be there to test you and say, are you going to stop? And you got to have like that drive, like what you're saying. You got to have that drive to be able to break through that wall and to keep going when things really get difficult.
Right. And the Ikigai, like, all these people, maybe none of them have done the Ikigai. Maybe some of them have, in order to figure out what they wanted to do. But the cool thing is that the Ikigai, whatever you create and find and discover from that strategy, is something that is truly going to bring you the things that you want, because you know that you love them, you know that you're good at it, you know that it's something the world needs. So you already have those values, you already have that reason and that burning fire inside you to want to accomplish that thing and to do it. That's there. So now, okay, I'm living with intention. I want to go get that. All right, there's some discomfort. Cool beans, man. Like, I'm going my small steps to go there and open my computer and send that email. All right. Yep. That was scary. All right. What's the next thing? Going to make it, and I'm living with intention now. Right. And so once you know that, it doesn't matter if you have to, do something that's kind of scary, like send an email to a person about speaking, which is probably really frightening, or whether you have to move and drive across the entire country to try and get your business off the ground, or again, whether it means that you have to do all sorts of weird things, right? But you do it because that is what is going to bring that fulfillment and that purpose into your life. So that's it. I mean, that is the thing, that is the string between everybody, is that intention.
And that is why the people watching this video need to head over to Nick's website and make sure that they get on that webinar, because I think it's going to be something that's going to be extremely valuable for anybody that's seeking that level of fulfillment. So Nick, like, we're winding down now, and I just want to ask you one last question. What would you like to pass on to any listeners out there? The one last piece of advice that you think you could offer, or that you would like to offer to anybody who's listening that may be looking to find that peace and fulfillment. Let's say they can't make it to your webinar. What would you tell them?
I would say one of the biggest things that you can do, just a small little thing to think about, is to start building trust in yourself. So I think that a lot of us are constantly breaking trust with ourselves all the time, right? We say we're going to do something. We say we want to do something. We, set up a plan to do something. We do something a few times, and then we don't follow through. And every time you don't follow through and you tell your brain you're going to be following through, you break trust with yourself. And every relationship needs trust, right? Me and you, me and somebody else, everybody out there. Trust is one of the absolute key pillars, if not the key pillar, in order to keep relationships thriving and surviving. And if you don't have trust in yourself, then you're lacking that key pillar, and that's not good. So I think that can be a holdup for people that is really problematic. And the only way that you can gain trust in yourself is by taking those small steps that we talked about and planning on following through and then doing it. And the more you do it, the more your brain will start to trust your body. And then eventually it'll become a habit for you, because that's essentially what a habit is. A habit is when your brain begins to trust your body so much that it just starts to do it without you even thinking about it. And that is a habit. It's a beautiful thing. It really is, because it's literally the ultimate trust in yourself that's being built. So it's a dance, it's beautiful. And I think if people can understand that that is where it all starts, is building trust in yourself, is setting the smallest 100% achievable goals. Like, with 100% certainty, you can follow through with the small things that you're saying you're going to do. That's going to build trust in yourself. And over time, it builds habits. And that is where the momentum is built. Totally. And, this all starts to connect for people. But the very beginning of this is setting those 100% certain things that you can absolutely follow through on and build that trust in yourself over time. And you'll be able to create incredible things in your life.
Beautiful. So how do people find you, Nick?
So you can find me right after breakfast is my podcast. I'm on pretty much every podcasting platform out there. So that's one place.
Okay.
Also, right after breakfast is my handle on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, and all those kind of fun things. And then my website is www.nickduska.com, nickduska.com. And you can learn more about the coaching that I do there. And you can also find, so what I said before in the conversation was you can go click on a link to find the webinar. What I really meant is you can go put in your email on the very top of my website. There's a little place you can put in your email and it'll say right there. And you can literally find a step-by-step discovery guide that's based on the webinar, the 4 simple things to find a career you love. And this discovery guide is basically the webinar in PDF form. Okay. And it walks you through all the strategies. It walks you through all the exercises. There's brainstorming sheets in there. So if you missed the webinar, just go over and download that PDF work guide, and it's tremendous. And you will be finding your Ikigai in no time. And so that's a great thing to do once you're on that site.
Excellent. And I'm sure that you'll probably have more webinars in the future. So if they do miss this first one, or if this gets released too late, then stay up to date with Nick. I'll leave links below down in the show notes so you'll be able to find him easily. And Nick, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. It's been great.
Nate, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Definitely.